Yes. Took Chucky to the vet yesterday. Bad news. I kind of figured it was. He's losing flesh on the side of his head, and they X-rayed him and did a few tests, and he's got a form of cancer. And the vet says no longer than a month. Well, we'll see about that, because I'm going to cure him with my blue healing light. So yeah, I shall start today, and I'll keep you posted. The blanket game. You ever heard of the blanket game? I'd have been about in my mid-20s, I guess, back in England, one summer, and somehow or other me and my friends got hooked up with people we didn't know, and they invited us to this big party in this huge mansion house. So off we go. We're in this big room downstairs. You know, there's lots going on, and then suddenly this guy says, hey, hands up anybody who doesn't know how to play the blanket. Up goes the hand. Okay, so he says to me, yeah, the blanket game. He said, what we do is, he says, I'm going to write down something that you're wearing, and he looks me up and down, you know, and on this piece of paper. So he does that, and then he folds it up, and he says, right now, and then they clear this area, and this blanket is laid out, and he says, now you go under the blanket, and then you try and guess what item I wrote down. If you get it right, you win the game. If you get it wrong, you got to take off that particular item, whatever it might have been, and put it outside the blanket. You up for that? So I thought about it, and I thought, yeah. So off we go. I'm laying under this blanket on my back. In the voice I hear him say, okay, off you go then. Socks. Nope. Socks come off. Kick them outside the blanket. There's about 45 people in this room. Watch. No. Watch comes off outside the blanket. T-shirt. Nope. T-shirt comes off out of the blanket. There's only one thing left. Underwear, I confidently say. Nope. Moment of hesitation. The brain is working. I'm cranking over. What's going on here? Off with them then. So off come the underpants, and I pull them outside. I said, but that's it. I don't have anything else on. And he said, oh yes you do. Do you want a clue? So I said, yeah. You're underneath it. And I went, the blanket? Boof, somebody pulled the blanket away, and they turned all the main lights on. And oh, everybody roared with laughter. Yeah, not a nice feeling. And I took it well. I took it well. The blanket guy, they called me after that for a while. Greetings. So, I thought I'd talk a little bit about my early travelling days. Seems like a lifetime ago, really, now. 1973, 1974, I think it was, when I first left the UK. Maybe we go back to my childhood. I had a great childhood in many ways. We lived in Windsor, and then we lived in Woodley. One of my claims to fame, my father bought a bungalow in Woodley from a family called the Lawrences, and their daughter was the girlfriend of Brian Jones from the Rolling Stones. And I would have been about 11, I suppose, then. And we went to see this house one day, before we bought it, I think it was. And it was a lovely bungalow, it had a big garden, 2/3 of an acre. No, yeah, 2/3 of an acre. And I do have a vague memory of playing in the garden with these guys and a goat. They had a goat. When I later find out, my father tells me later that I was actually playing on the lawn with Brian Jones, the drummer, what's his name, Charlie Watts, and I think the other one might have been Bill, whatever his name was. But I was actually playing with the Rolling Stones on this, in the garden. Anyway, shortly after we bought that house and lived in there, Brian Jones drowned in that swimming pool incident. And we had sacks, literally sacks of fan mail in the garage. And I used to go and pick a few apples from one of the neighbours' trees and sit there and read all these letters that were just unopened, you know, they were all delivered to Brian Jones. And there was girls who wanted toenails, bits of hair, anything. They wrote these amazing letters to him, and I didn't understand a lot of it, but I would read it, you know. So yeah, I had a good childhood, I suppose, until my parents got divorced. That would have been, I would have been 15. Big surprise to me. Blamed my mother. Wrongly, really, but I didn't know at the time. Blamed my mother for that. And I went to live with my father, with his new wife. Went to live at their house in Burnham, near Slough. She had two sons who would have been, what, 11 and 14. Their father had died, so she met my dad, and after a while they got together. And of course I understand it now, you know, these two boys didn't take too kindly to this 15-year-old boy coming to live with them, and they messed around with my stuff. They broke some of my albums, my LPs, you know, when they used to be on these black big circular discs. Vinyl we call it, don't we? Yeah. And I pushed one of them through a patio door window. Not deliberately, I just pushed him and he went flying through the window. Thank God there was nothing wrong with him. He didn't get cut or anything. So my father was issued an ultimatum. He goes or you both go, because we were living in her house. So my father found me a room a rented room with a Polish family a few miles away. And he got me a job at a factory. So at the age of almost 17 years, I was living on my own, working in a factory. And I did have a chip on my shoulder, I have to admit. I blamed my mother for all this. And I had a new bunch of friends, and they were all older than me. I soon got into drinking, the pub life. And I looked around, and I mean, I realize now that not many teenagers thought like I did, but I just thought about what my life was going to be like, I understood at that age that, you're born, you live, you die. That much I knew. And so I started to think about, well, what will my life be like, So I started to look at people who were older than me, people in their 20s, 30s, 40s. They even went as far as 50s. And I'd ask them outright, how do you feel about your life? Are you happy? And not one of them said they were truly happy. And I used to sit there and think to myself, okay, so what's going to happen to me? I'm going to probably meet some girl. She's going to get pregnant. We'll get married. And then I'll spend the next 40 years working for some company. We'll buy a house, we'll buy a car, all on credit. And I'll spend 40 years paying that off. And then when that's over, I got my pension to look forward to. And to be absolutely honest, that did not appeal to me at all. I wanted more from life than that. And so I decided, well, there's lots of countries on this planet, Maybe I'd do better somewhere else. And so yeah, by 17, I got myself a passport. And off I went, against my father's wishes, but off I went. And, well, it was a bit scary, because I was told, if you get in trouble, don't be coming to me. That's what my father said. Don't be expecting me to bail you out. So you got to remember, there in the mid-70s, there was no emails, there was no internet. I was very much on my own. But it certainly got the adrenaline going, and, I got the bug for it. I really, really wanted to travel. Now, one thing my father did teach me, and he always used to say to me, son, if you got a good work ethic, if you do your best for whoever it is who's employing you, you'll always get work. And he drummed that into me, I remember he used to give me 2 shillings to clean his car. And when it was done, I'd go to him there expecting him to give me the money, but I knew the drill. He'd come out and have a look at the car, and he'd walk around the car, and he'd go, Mr. Bit there, look. And I'd stare at him and stare at the bit I missed, and he'd go, well, go on then, do it. There'd be about 7 or 8 things, that had to be done, and then he'd give me the money. And I'd go to the shop and buy, humbugs and a quarter of American hard gums or milk gums or whatever it was. So he taught me that work was important. So when I was traveling and I was working, I'd always do my best. And that caused me problems, I can tell you. I mean, I remember the first time I ever went to to Crete to pick tomatoes. There was a season, and I think it was February to April, maybe February to March. And you could, these farmers just hired us for a few dollars an hour to pick these tomatoes. You'd be given a big basket, and you'd have a row, and you'd all start at the same place, and off you'd go, And of course, I'd go racing off. I'd pick tomatoes like you wouldn't believe, and all the other backpackers didn't like that at all. Hey, what you doing, man? Slow down, But I kept it up, and it always stood me in good stead. Let me think about some of the jobs I did that I can remember. I picked fruit. I ripped up old plants, replanted. I washed dishes. I worked construction. At the age of 17, I didn't know what I wanted in life, but I knew what I didn't want. I didn't want a life of toil for 45 years, working a job I didn't like, just to get a pension to see me through until my dying days. I didn't want that. And I had some amazing experiences traveling around Europe. I did write a travel book called A Wanderer's Words, and there'll be a link to that in the description, where you can hear all the details of some of my wilder travel experiences. But to cut a long story short, I deliberately put myself into risky situations just to see what would happen, and it always worked out without fail. So that kind of gave me the motivation to keep doing that. Sometimes I'd be in some place and the work would dry up, and I might have $30, $40 left, and I'd just spend it. I'd just drink it on a 2 or 3 day bender until I had no money left at all. And then the adrenaline would kick in. And it always worked out. So I was pretty much fearless. And yeah. And when I used to go back in the summer and tell my friends about what I did, I stopped doing that after a while, because they just didn't believe me. Even though what I was saying was true, they didn't believe me because it just sounded so way out. But when you put yourself in those positions, that's what happens to you. Yeah, I had a great time though. My traveling years were good, and I just didn't know what I wanted. And I'm sure most young people are the same, You don't know what you want to do with your life. I just wanted to experience as many different things as possible, see as many places as possible. And as the time went by, I got bolder and bolder. I made North Africa. I did the Middle East. Didn't take me long to find out that there were moshabs in Israel where you work by the hour and get paid by the hour. So that would be 3 months of the year I would spend there, and that would get me enough money together to travel for another few months. And I became quite knowledgeable about the European backpacker trail, I guess you could call it. And the only book that was available then for people like that was Lonely Planets, I suppose. The Lonely Planet Guide. But I found out from asking other travellers, you know, and they would say, oh yeah, if you go to that place at that time of the year, you know, there's at least 3 weeks works of fruit picking there, and then you could go from there to there. So I kind of did that, you know, and I had a tent, so I used to wild camp quite often in tents. Uh, yeah, twice I went through Yugoslavia hitchhiking, which you weren't allowed to do. If the cops caught you, they'd sling you in jail. I never got caught by the cops. And my favourite way of travelling was actually to get a train from London to Athens. I think it was £75 it cost me. And over a period of, say, 6 or 7 days, you'd end up, you know, in Athens, going through Yugoslavia. I think it's called Bosnia and Serbia now, but then it was Yugoslavia. So I'd go there, go through those places, and I think I must have done that 3 times, gone down to Athens using the train. Great way to travel. I remember once we're on a train, and I think we're coming up to a border, and there was loads of women on the train, and they all came up to me and they're trying to talk to me, and then I figured out what they wanted. They all had coffee, and what they wanted to do was they wanted to put all their coffee in my backpack. And so once I figured it out and I agreed, they almost emptied my backpack of clothes, and they all put some of my clothes in their bags, filled up my backpack with kilograms of bags of coffee, put a few clothes on the top. And then when we got to close to the border area, the customs cops got on board, and they started to go through all the locals' bags. Obviously they were looking for stuff like coffee and that, you know. And of course the old women opened their bags and they let them have a look, and of course they didn't find anything because it was all in my backpack, and they never once asked me for a look into my bags, and I guess the old women knew this. So as soon as we got through, it was all big cheers and everything else, and they gave me all my clothes back and they took all their coffee back. So that was quite funny. One time I was on the train going through Europe, and in my carriage was a guy about my age and his father. And I used to roll up joints, you know, on the train. I didn't care too much about it. I just was a bit careful, you know. So I sparked up this joint when these two were in the carriage with me, and the father was asleep. So I'm smoking it, and you know, and suddenly the young guy looks at me and smiles and nods and gestures that he wants a puff. So I give him a puff. Because unbeknown to me, I think it'd probably been his first time, because after a couple of minutes he's gone all green. He's gone all green and just leant his head against his father's shoulder, and I thought, oh my God, his father's gonna wake up. I'm gonna be in all kinds of trouble. So I got my backpack and went to another carriage on the train. Never did find out what happened there. But yeah, some of the interesting experiences I had whilst traveling. Yeah. So here I am in the morning with the dogs. Thought I'd film the dogs a little bit. Yeah, Chucky's 11. Ging ging. See his tail wag that as soon as I said that. He's got a bit of an eye problem, but I'm working on that. Chucky's a good boy. He was one of a litter of the street dogs, and what normally happens in the village is when a street dog gives birth, after a week or two, people go take the ones they want. The rest get left on the street. He's checking out this bit of the garden here. Yeah, a leg cut. Yeah. Where's the other one? There's the bikes. Where's the other one? There she is, Lucky. Oh, good girl. She's a little bit older than Chuck. She had a year on the streets before we took her in. She's really got a great temperament. She's been sterilized, but he still follows her butt around most of the time. Never had him done. I know he's had the pleasure of at least once, because I caught him with a black dog and they were still locked together, so I just took a few pictures and posted it on Facebook. Yeah, and there's Lucky. Yeah. Hello. King King. Totally different personalities. Totally different personalities. That is where we do our washing up and stuff. There's Chuck. Look, there's Chuck. Watch this. He'll wag his tail as soon as I speak. Look. Ging ging. You see that? Look, straight away. Dogs could never play poker, could they? The tail wag would just be a giveaway. He looks like he's waiting to get in, but he knows how to open that door with his nose. If he wants to go in. Oh hoy. Oh hoy. Let's go down and see our Luck. Yeah. She's a great dog. She'll just lay down now. Yeah, she was, he's drinking out of the pond. Yeah, he's drinking out of the pond. And she was a street dog round the corner, and we had Chucky, this guy here, and he was quite young. And we had an old dog that we'd had for 17 years, a street pup. And she got run over by the neighbour by accident. Yeah, total accident. So after a couple of weeks, we decided as a family we'll take this female dog that was on the streets in. She was in a terrible state. Well, undernourished and covered in ticks. I think I spent 2 hours getting the ticks out of her ears with tweezers. That there he goes into the house. Yeah, and we gave her a bath, and she couldn't believe it, you know. She gets to sleep with us in the aircon, and she has a good life, this dog. That's why we call her Lucky. And so we've had her for over 10 years now. She's a little bit fat now. Doesn't get enough exercise, but she'll go. We go out 3 times a day, so she enjoys that. Yeah, the dogs are a big part of our life, and it's dogs for life. So they're both coming with me and my wife when we go to Sisaket. That'll be interesting because she's never seen a cow in her life, or a chicken. And judging by the way she is with cats, we've got some work to do, huh? Cats. And she knows what that word is. Yeah. So she's a cool dog. Probably weighs about 38 kilos. She's a big dog. Strong as an ox. Very, very territorial. If another dog came down that street, boom, she'd be gone, and she'd go straight through the gate. There's no stopping her. And she's quite unusual because other dogs know their territory. She'll walk into another dog's territory with no problem at all. She'll follow me on the bike. Me on the bike, not her. Yeah. She's a cool dog. She's going to live out her wonderful life in the town of Ampakukan. Yeah. We're going to have to keep them on their harnesses for a while. Let me show you one of their harnesses. Hey! She's seen a cat. Ma? Just going to show you her harness here. There it is, quite a big one. She'll have to wear that with the lead for a while whenever we're out, because they can get lost real easy. Two locals came in and they're asking, and I couldn't understand what they were saying, and one of the other guys says, oh, they're looking for plasterers. So I put my hand up. Yeah, I'm a plasterer, because I'd seen a bit of plastering done, so I figured I could do that. So, you're a plasterer? Yeah. So off we go. So they take me and off to this site, and I'm put in this big room with these three other guys for locals, and they were plasterers, you know. So we all had our mix. Somebody had mixed up all this plaster in this great big tub in the middle of the room, and I knew to wet the wall. So I wet my wall, got my trowel and my, I don't know what that thing is you call it. Is it a mortar where you put the muck on you put the wet plaster on and you mess around with it with the trowel. So I started to spread it on the wall. And these French plasterers, they looked over and they're giggling, you know, and I'm like, what's wrong? So they said, no, they waved their hand, no, and they showed me how they did it. And I couldn't believe it. They stood about 2 meters away from the wall, got their mortar, got a great big load of plaster on their trowel and just threw it at the wall. They threw it at the wall and it splat and it hit the wall and stuck. And they do this about 12, 15 times until they got a load of plaster, and then they'd get their straight edge and they'd go along with it. And I guess it was about 2 or 3 hours when I picked this up. And, you know, I got the hang of it, and the governor arrived, the foreman guy, or the boss, and he came in the room, how you doing? He watched me for a few minutes, said, great, okay. So, I mean, these guys really helped me out, because I'd have got fired, you know. I didn't know the first thing about plastering. I was a driver for some times. One of my funny travelling experiences happened when I was about 22. I come back to England in May, because I always went back for the summer. And I used to get a job carrying the hod. If you don't know what carrying the hod is, the hod was a strange shaped tool that you could put bricks in. I think it was 12 bricks you could get in it, or 10. And it's heavy, you know, and it's got a long wooden handle. And so I used to carry the hod. You're carrying bricks up the scaffold and laying them down in a pile so that the bricklayer would have, you know, bricks to lay, and sometimes, you know, you'd have to take the cement up there too. So I'd do that, you know. And I was doing that, and oh, that's right. Then I got a job in a factory. Didn't like that, and I was living in a place with 3 other guys. And we'd gone out one night, and we'd all got drunk. And we got back, and I was complaining, and I was saying that, oh, you know, I didn't have a great deal of money, and I said, normally this time of the year I'm off, you know. I'm away to travel, because I'd leave England in September or October to get away from the winter. And I was complaining, and then apparently I got this map of Europe out, laid it out on the table, got a pin, closed my eyes and put the pin into the map, and it landed in just near Trieste, in northern Italy, and I told all these guys apparently that I'm off first thing in the morning. I'm packing my pack and I'm off to wherever the pin landed. And I woke up in the morning with a terrible hangover, and these guys are like, oh, you're off then? So I kind of felt I had no choice, really, because of, you know, I didn't really want to do it at that particular time, but I told them I would, so I did. So I got my pack together, got a bus down to Dover, went across on the ferry, got a few trains, and 3 days later, this bus drops me off at this little town, and it was a small town, where my pin had landed, and dropped me off there about 11 o'clock at night. Got off this bus, and it dropped me right in the middle of this little town, and there was a little memorial to the war, like on a little roundabout. So I sat down there, propped my backpack up against this tree, lit a cigarette, and thought, well, okay, I'm here now, you know, what's going to happen? This is the first time I'd done this, by the way, put a pin into a map and just gone to the place without any forethought whatsoever. And part of me was thinking, oh boy, this is crazy. The other part was thinking, well, okay, you know, the adventure begins. And I don't know, after 10 or 15 minutes, this guy came along with his Alsatian dog on a leash. And he walked past me and he nodded and I nodded, and his dog cocked its leg on my backpack and peed. Oh, sorry. He couldn't speak very much English. Sorry. And I'm like, it's okay, don't worry about it. And actually the dog had missed the backpack, but wasn't far away. So off they go for their walk, and I sat there, you know, and bought a beer. There was a shop still open, so I bought a beer. And on his way back, he came over to me, and we tried to talk, but we couldn't really communicate. So he's gone with his dog, and he's come back 15 minutes later with his son, who spoke English. And he wanted to know what I'm doing there, you know, and I just said, well, I'm just traveling around, you know, looking for work and stuff. And he gave me a job. And I worked for him for 2 months, and a great family. I used to drive his tractor around, and he let me ride his motorcycle in the evenings, and yeah, so I mean, you know, you can't get much crazier than putting a pin in a map thousands of miles away from where you live, and just going there to see what would happen. But that's kind of what I did. Yeah.